Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! ISB!
43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it off. Got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Tuesday. Thank you so much for being with us, February 13th. Glad to be past yesterday. Thanks for all the well wishes. I courteously ignored them all until today. I don't know why. That way I don't have to acknowledge my birthday. But I appreciate everybody very, very sincerely. I really do. So thank you guys, all of you. Hello to everybody on the Andy Moore Honda hotline already. Hitting it up early and often. Las Vegas, Larry, Donald down in Atlanta, Forrest in Southern Georgia, Kevin down in Jeffersonville, Kent up in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Brian says the Pacers were so flat last night at Charlotte, hoping they did not mess up trading Buddy Hield. Man, that's not a team you should be losing to either. Fozan over at Amon Jordan. How are you, sir? 5 lefts and shenanigans. We've got shenanigans as Mike joins us from Southern Wabash County as well, and many others. Thank you all so much. On the program today, Mike DeCourcy, Aaron Torres will join us as well. Chronic Hoosier, and Mike Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times. So a loaded program as usual. I want to congratulate Mackenzie Holmes of the Indiana women's basketball team she's the all-time leading scorer now for that Indiana women's program. And to me, that is very, very tough to do. Tyra Buss, who had the record before, was pretty much, she had Amanda Cahill, but it was pretty much Tyra Buss doing all the scoring on those teams. Mackenzie has been on teams that have been surrounded by nothing but great scorers, whether it's Sarah Scalia or all the other great shooters that are on this team, that team right now. Sydney Parrish, any of those can just go off on a night, and yet she's able to set the scoring. Grace Berger, when she had her. So but the fact that she was able to do that with all that talent around her makes that all the more impressive. And Terry Morin, 9th straight 20-win season. That's not a bad run, not a bad decade. Get you 200 wins in a decade. That's pretty good. But more importantly, that shows sustained success, which a lot of Indiana fans would like to see in some other programs. The AP poll out yesterday. Indiana is ranked, Indiana State, that is, for the first time since Larry Bird walked in jeans and blistered the Sycamores in a scrimmage in his introduction to the Indiana State team. And that's no joke. He actually did do that. Indiana basketball currently 4th in the state of Indiana, behind, of course, number 2, Purdue. You've got Indiana State now ranked in the top 25. They're number 37 in Ken Palm, and Butler is number 49, while Indiana sits down at number 96. And as I ran through all the stats, they are of 11 Big Ten or Division I schools. They're 11th in free throw shooting. I mean, you can go through them all. IUPUI, IU Fort Wayne, Valparaiso, Ball State, Evansville, doesn't matter. Got them all beat. How's everybody else doing? Appreciate you being with us, like I said. of course, don't forget Indiana Sports Beat Radio, powered by Andy Moore Honda. Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate you. That's right, Brian. Just trips around the sun, man. Just trips around the sun. Fat Tuesday. Hello, Five Lefts. Thank you for that reminder. Very cool. I should have worn. Man, had I known that, I would have chosen different colors. I don't know that I have all the, was that purple and gold and I'm missing something. There's another yellow. Yes, I think it's yellow. What are Indiana fans doing during the basketball games now? I mean, it cannot be fun to be watching those or as they come up. And before I get into that, I want to give a shout out to the Voiles family Wagyu farm down in Mitchell. Man, you talk about some great beef. Have you ever had Wagyu? Ooh, it's like the creme de la creme of beef. They're generally in at Chop Shop. You can actually find it at Chop Shop. Voiles, the Voiles Wagyu is available at Chop Shop, which every Monday night right now you can 7:05. You find Inside Indiana men's basketball with Don Fisher. But was in there again last night. Of course, the Voiles folks were in there. And down for Mitchell. Homegrown locals. So look it up and give it a shot because it's good. Yeah, you've got the last stretch of the season here. And conference-wise, it's a substantial number of games yet. Where did I just have the list pulled up? Where did it go? Anyway, which games are they going to win? Which games are they not going to win? And as a fan, how do you approach that? I mean, there's a point to where it's not like you don't know or have a pretty good expectation of what's going to be happening. 7 games remain on the schedule. Northwestern Nebraska, at Penn State, Wisconsin at home, at Maryland, at Minnesota, and Michigan State at home. Northwestern is just tough because they have great guard play. Boo Buie, and Indiana has had great problems with teams that have great guard play because they lose games 3-2. Nebraska will come into Simon Scott Assembly Hall. I think that is going to be a tough game for Indiana, but winnable. At Penn State, for this team, I'm yet to trust them to win on the road, although they did show some moxie at Ohio State. Then Wisconsin comes in, who inexplicably has just run off the cliff. I mean, unbelievable what has happened with them. Indiana then has to travel to Maryland, which very, very difficult place to play, and definitely one that that would be a big win for Indiana if they could get that done. I wouldn't expect it, but at Minnesota up in the barn would be tough, and then you end the season with Michigan State coming to Bloomington. So it's not that any of these games are impossible or out of reach. Joe asking, why wasn't Woody on the coach's show last night? Well, I can't answer that. All I can say is instead of over the hump, scheduling conflict. That's all I was kind of wondering that, but yeah, he's missed several this year. And that one was a little surprise, being that there aren't that many left. Man, Mike Shenanigans mentioning that Texas Tech-Kansas game. I watched that game, and boy, oh boy, did they ever manhandle Kansas. I mean, they just dog beat them. Ended up winning by like 27 or something. What was the final score in that game? 79-50. Holy cow. 29 points there. I mean, they were just rolling in every way, and Kansas could not do anything right. Hunter Dickinson, he spent so much of his time out on the perimeter that that has just got to wreck Kansas's rebounding. I mean, you've got your biggest dude who's camped out on the top of the key or even further out. So it's Bill Self got he was tired. He didn't want to see anymore. He gets ejected. He got 2 technical fouls, which the game was way gone by then. And how about Darian Williams for Texas Tech? Holy cow. Talk about a great night. 12 of 12 from the field. He was 4 of 4 from behind the arc, 30 points. And Texas Tech unranked out of the Big 12. That's how tough the Big 12 is. Texas Tech is unranked, and they just spanked Kansas by nearly 30. It's 29-point loss. It matches Kansas's largest against an unranked opponent in the AP era since 1948. The other being against Kentucky in 1950. And it was also the third, to give you a better explanation of how the parity in college basketball, this was the 33rd time this season that an AP top 10 team lost on the road to an unranked opponent. That is already the most through the month of February in a single season in AP poll history. Williams is a sophomore transfer from Nevada, so I'm sure that Steve Alford wishes he had him back. He was also perfect at the free throw line and had 11 rebounds. So 30 and 11 on 12 of 12, 4 of 4, and 2 of 2. I mean, that's just a perfect night. But man, unranked. They're not even ranked. And apparently that was the first time that Bill Self has ever been ejected, which is, I guess, kind of hard to believe, but not really. I mean, kind of since he's been around as long as he have. But about 5:49 to go, he got those. Hunter Dickinson airballed a 3-point attempt. And that was about it. It was the 772nd game at Kansas for Self, whose only other ejection in 31 seasons overall as a college coach came in 1999 when he was with Tulsa. And that was at Wyoming. So, and the weird thing is Kansas is one of those teams that I'm thinking is a number 1 seed, but every time I think that, they end up losing. But you've got to keep in perspective the fact that they play in the Big 12. which is just a monster. But we've got lots more to talk about. Where's Indiana go from here? Mike DeCourcy's going to join us. Aaron Torres, Chronic Hoosier today. Mike Niziolek as well. Thanks a lot for being with us. We'll get to your comments and more as well. Plenty more coming on Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the
One thing, and it doesn't really excuse the fact that they lost by almost 30, but Kansas was missing Kevin McCullough Jr. last night. But again,
I know they were missing somebody, but
that's probably only like a 15-point, boost right there. They still would have gotten beaten pretty handily, I feel like.
Yeah, you still have to be able to. They
play
just
defense.
They got dog run. They just got beat. Yeah, Texas Tech coach came from North Texas.
Yeah.
Who his biggest win before he came over to Texas Tech was when they upset Purdue in 2019 in the first round, I believe. But I also think the coach of Texas Tech, played for Bob Knight at Texas Tech.
Wouldn't that be something?
No, that's a fact. I'm fairly positive.
That's what I'm saying. If that happens to be the case, that's a nice little factoid.
It just and the Bob Knight coaching tree continues. Chris Beard, and now this dude, which I didn't know about.
His name is where's he at?
Steve something. I had no idea. I was like, who is the freaking coach?
No, that's not him.
It's Mick something.
I don't know why it's not showing me their current coach. Here we go. No, it's Grant McCasland. He's kind of like old Kurt Signetti. He's been around for a long time, and he's never had a losing season. But he's never had a job that's been worth tooting his horn about.
I believe he played. Did he play at Texas Tech?
Let me see. No, he played at Baylor from 95 to 99.
What did I hear last night? I heard something.
But yeah, this dude's he's been coaching since 2004, and he's never had a losing season, believe it or not. So good morning, Mr. DeCourcy.
Good morning, everybody.
Speaking of never having a losing season, undefeated Mike DeCourcy.
Mike, I saw you were giddy about the. Oh, never mind. We only got 10 seconds. Okay. Here we go.
Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. It is Tuesday. Appreciate you here on this nice-looking day outside for February, especially February 13th, day before Valentine's Day. Speaking of that, so I've got a sweet treat for you. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News. How are you, sir?
Jim, you know what the real significance of Valentine's Day is, don't you?
I do not. Obviously, that's why I'm single.
No, because it has nothing to do with that. The real significance of Valentine's Day in our world is that is the day when there's an actual NCAA tournament bubble formed. Because all the stuff that you hear before, that's not real because there's no pressure. Like there's pressure, but there's no pressure. There's no, we better get this together or we're not getting in. It doesn't exist in early February. It exists now. Every game you play, as a team that is fighting to get in the NCAA tournament, but with a marginal resume, is excruciating. And every game that every other team that you know is in the same position as you means nearly as much as yours does. So it could be the 15th or whatever, but because February is a short month, go halfway through, you get to the 14th, that's where it is. And so today the NCAA tournament bubble is official. All those bubble watches that you saw in the media the last couple of weeks, they're just talking. It's real. It's real now.
Yeah. And you want to talk about real is the Big 12 conference. That is a monster. They are literally a monster. And to be able to do that in this day and age, I'm impressed because it's not the ACC with Duke and North Carolina. It's not the Big 10. It's the Big 12 who has added members like West Virginia, Central Florida, Cincinnati, that were never really considered which big time. And I'm not saying that they are right now, but this conference is unbelievable. I watched that Texas Tech game last night, which was fun to watch, but I'm like, Kansas just got destroyed by a team that's not even ranked, and they're third in that conference. And it's like, what, are you kidding me?
Can I throw a little cold water on this?
Sure. That's why I always get excited, so somebody can do that.
Let me go through TCU's non-conference achievements. I'll get to one any day now. Okay,
Where are they?
They defeated Michigan.
They're only 6-5.
That's the best non-conference win that Texas Tech has. They defeated Michigan on a neutral floor. After that, hold on to your hats. They defeated Northern Iowa. Those are the most significant accomplishments for your Texas Tech Red Raiders.
Until last night.
Non-conference I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Give me another team. How about Cincinnati? Cincinnati's been
they're way down
through metrically. They've been great metrically all year long. One of the top teams in the net, one of the top teams in KenPom. Let's go through their non-conference resume. They beat Eastern Washington.
Yeah, they're one of the last four teams. I just mentioned them because they were a new team.
Okay, let's go through Oklahoma. Let's try them. Oklahoma's non-conference achievements. Okay, I'll get to one. They beat Iowa. You see a trend here?
Right, but this is also a conference that has 6 ranked teams.
Yeah, but how many times do we have to go through this? Rankings are nonsense.
I agree with you there. I agree with you. And not only that, Houston is not a team that I think can win the national championship. No, I shouldn't say
I agree with you on that. Let me go through Houston, the number 1 overall team in KenPom and the net. Their greatest non-conference achievement, they beat Dayton. That's the one. They beat Dayton and they beat Utah and they beat Xavier. I mean, there's something wrong here. There's something wrong. Kansas played and beat a lot of good people. They beat Yukon. They beat Kentucky. They played a very strong schedule. But the rest of the league seems to be surfing behind the Jayhawks. Hey, you guys take care of all the tough teams, and we'll just come in behind you.
But they're 7. Kansas is 7-5 in this conference as well.
I understand that, but none of those teams went out there and challenged themselves at a high level. And when they did challenge themselves, they didn't achieve. They didn't win. Even to the extent like teams like Villanova and Dayton and Xavier and Butler have significant wins over Big 12 opponents. I think there's something here that isn't, where reality and perception are not meeting. And I have a problem with it. I'm not sure what to do with it because I think that they're going to get a truckload of teams into the NCAA tournament, and they're all going to be seeded reasonably well. And who knows? They may win games because they're not bad basketball teams. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that these Big 12 teams that are being celebrated are not very good teams, but they haven't earned everything that they've been accorded. I will say that.
The conference that I think that is probably best, if you wanted to talk about a conference, would be the SEC.
I think you're probably right. I think
because they have teams that I think that just scare the living daylights out of you. Tennessee can beat anybody. Auburn can beat anybody. Alabama, do not sleep on Alabama.
But even Alabama and Auburn played no one. And I could go through and do that whole thing again, but I think we've exhausted that.
That's right. Indiana
and Alabama played a ton of teams. They played a really difficult non-conference schedule, Jim, and they lost to everybody. Like they lost to everybody, almost nearly everybody good they played. I can tell you, Alabama's an interesting case because they really did try, and they challenged themselves at a very high level, and it's paid off in a very prominent computer rankings with Ken Palm in the net. But they played Purdue, lost. Arizona, lost. They played Creighton, lost. They played Clemson, lost. They played Ohio State and managed to lose that one too. Their best out of conference win. You're going to love this, Jim. You know who it's against? Your Sycamores. Their best out of conference win is a home win by 22 points over the Indiana State Sycamores. That's their highest ranked non-conference.
It's a good win. It's a good win. It's just not in stature. I love the fact I finished watching Winning Time, the series on HBO.
The Showtime thing. I mean,
HBO, absolutely incredible. Good.
I'm through the first season, but not the second.
The second season gets better, in my opinion.
Oh, wow.
Well, it's hard to get better because that was pretty cool. And Dr. Jerry Buss was an amazing figure. I mean, some of the vision that he had, I'm like, where the hell did that come from? A guy that had no sports knowledge whatsoever, yet he built what he built. And it's still, the Roman Empire still stands. They may not be winning the championships at the moment, but it's still an empire. And I'm like, wow. Because that's where they were built. That's the Colosseum was built at that time, and that's what you can see, and it's mind-boggling. But the second season, last year you see Bird as the antagonist. This year, while still the antagonist, they show a lot more layers to him, and it is actually very, very informative for people that don't know his background. It shows his father. Which that's probably the most I've ever seen of his dad and his involvement. It opens with him driving through the supposed Indiana countryside with an IU bag, which was packed on his way out. But I have to give them credit. They did use the old IU Roman-esque looking logo. So got to give them some credit there. But it also, one of the funniest things is after he sat out for a year or whatever, who ended up being the coach at Indiana State? Daggone it. I can't think of it, but he was an assistant coach at the time and just saw him shooting around. I think he would go down there and play with the workers from French Lick Hotel and kept trying to get him to come out to the team. And he finally shows up one day and he's wearing jeans. And he says, well, can I get you some gear? He goes, no, I'm good. And apparently just torched that team running up and down the court in jeans and whatever shoes he was wearing. And that is a factual story that he just blistered them in jeans. So
the coach's name was Bill Hodges.
Bill Hodges. Yeah. He was an assistant and saw Larry Bird, and the rest is history. I mean, just seriously think if that, I mean, and this happens all the time in life, but that interaction, because Larry Bird was a guy who had gone in a direct, he had allowed himself to go in a direction for whatever reason. And he didn't care to change that. And somebody else changed it for him. And we are all the benefactors of that as well, to get to see that, to see what happened with him and Magic after that and what all happened. None of that happens if Bill Hodges doesn't see him out there shooting. It's crazy. These little backstories.
Yeah. There are things like that happen in all of our lives. I mean, I could point to a lot of examples of things that led me to have the opportunities that I have to be sitting here with you now. It is, and that's one that impacted the entire state of the sport of basketball. Bird's one of the grandest figures in basketball history, and to think that he almost didn't play is really amazing. As with the kind of ability that he had. And it was obvious to Bob Knight. I mean, he recruited him to Indiana at a time when he was bringing the best of the best in to Bloomington. And, I'm sure that if Larry had felt right there, that if he had been comfortable in Bloomington, and remember, Larry's problem with Indiana was not Bob.
Oh no.
It was
his problem with Kent Benson is who his problem was.
Yeah, it was not with Bob, and so that's not what a lot of players in later years, we know, Jason Collier and Luke Recker and guys like that, were not cut out to play for Bob, but that wasn't the Larry problem. It just wasn't the right time.
I agree with you, Rick. I have never agreed with somebody more in their life. But we've got to take a break. We've got the great Mike DeCourcy with us from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network. When we come back, we'll talk about, speaking of bubbles, it's time to start talking about bubble watches for teams. And other teams are definitely not on the bubble. That would be one like Purdue. But who is that fourth seed? I have not got that pegged yet. So we'll talk about that and plenty more with Mike DeCourcy right after this, brought to you by Chop Shop. Right here in Bloomington, Chop Shop Market and Table, which has exquisite meats and a great restaurant, and is home to Inside Indiana Men's Basketball each Monday night at 7:05. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home, Anthony played against Hodges' younger brother at Lebanon. I did not know that's where they were from. It's when he had the Walker brothers and Mark Hedges. Lebanon, that's up there by Frankfurt, home of the hot dogs, and home of blue chips. You ever been in that gym, Frankfurt's gym?
I don't know that I've ever been to Frankfurt. Where
I have not been in the gym personally, but that's where they shot blue chips. And it's a pretty cool round gym. So it looks like a little college.
Blue Chips is one of my least favorite movies of all time.
It's so funny though, how it was dead on, but what do you not like about it?
Well, I don't think it's I know Ron Shelton, who wrote the script. I had a couple of meals with Ron Shelton, and I know that he wrote a great script, and I didn't think the director, William Friedkin, who made some amazing movies, really connected with the material in a way that he should have. Some of the things that bothered me were just small, like, how do you put Penny Hardaway into a basketball game the thing that you're going to say that he's amazing at is shooting? Like, what are you doing? Like, you couldn't have choreographed some of his ridiculous passes to make it more interesting. All he does in the scouting show, the one it's supposedly in the city, in that gym with the upper track and all that, with Boeheim and Tark and those guys. All he does is make shots. I mean, I know this is really picky, and there's lots of other things that I hate about it, but the idea that would be what you would settle on to show that Penny Hardaway is a must-have recruit, right there said to me, this guy is not getting this at all. He does not understand. He may understand basketball. He does not understand these players. And it just grew from there. There were many things that I had a problem with.
Matt Nover, I think, had a birthday not too long ago, and it was on Twitter. I think he was thanking people, whatever, and I tweeted back asking him, say, "Hey man, do you still have the tractor?"
All right, here we go, guys.
For 90 days. That's right. 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday, February 13th. Pre-Valentine's Day. No candles, no dinner, but we have Mike DeCourcy. So what more could you ask for? Mike, as you mentioned earlier, with Valentine's Day, it brings the bubble. And the bubble watch starts to become a real thing for teams, and you are very much in tune with that with your bracket analysis. Boy, I got that right. I'm proud of me for not forgetting that. But the Purdue is unquestionably, and Yukon, locked up a number one seed. I know that it's 7 games left and things could happen, but I would be shocked if those things happened. It's not that it can't
I always
change.
say that in order to be a lock for something, like for Purdue to be a lock for the NCAA tournament, they have to be able to lose all their remaining games and still get in. And so they are a lock for the tournament for sure.
Yeah,
because even if they lost all 7, they'd still be like 22-9. So they're going. But they are. If they, the way to put it comfortably, Jim, is if they continue on their present path, they will be a number one seed without a doubt. And that doesn't necessarily mean winning every single game. It means winning about 9 out of every 10 games. And so that would mean basically maybe losing 1 or 2 more. They could lose 2 more and still be at 1. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and I think the Big Ten, the most that they're going to look at would be getting 6 teams into the tournament this year. Purdue, Illinois, Wisconsin, as long as they don't lose the rest of their games in a row. My God, what has happened with them? Have lost 4 straight. Northwestern, Michigan State is just Michigan State. They're on the rise now, which is what they do every year. And Nebraska is going to sure be there, man. They're 15-1 at home. They're 17-8 overall. So they've just got to keep staying up what they're doing. But Purdue, they're just hard to stop. And as they have gotten better, Edey's gotten a little bit better. Their guard play for Purdue is better. It's still not elite. I got Purdue fans getting on me yesterday because I said it wasn't superior. It's not. If it was, Purdue would be unbeatable. If they had, guards that were probably juniors and seniors, this team would probably be unbeatable because you cannot stop, in college at least, Zach Edey. But that got me to thinking, Mike, if you took out Zach Edey's unquestionably the best player in the country. Who's the second?
That's a great question. It really is. And I think that probably the the player, if I were voting like a Heisman ballot, we don't do that in hoops. It's, if you're writing down player of the year, you just write down who it is, right? So everybody's going to write down Zach, almost certainly. But if I were doing a Heisman ballot for basketball, I think my second vote would probably go to RJ Davis from North Carolina. Probably. There's a significant gap. And that's why we can say with great certainty that if Zach continues, if he stays healthy through March 10th or whatever, he's going to be the National Player of the Year for the second year in a row on a unanimous basis, maybe not unanimous on voting. But remember, there are a lot of Player of the Year awards. There are a lot of Player of the Year awards in football too, but nobody pays attention to any of them but the Heisman. We don't have that in basketball. The Oscar Robertson Trophy that the basketball writers present is very important. So is the Naismith. So is the Sporting News one, because we're the oldest, and
I was getting ready to say it's the most prestigious. I got to get me some Sporting News merch, man, to wear. If you put RJ Davis on Purdue's team, that is that's a team that there is not one of those like that in the country right now.
Right.
But that, again, that's what I'm talking about. That makes them unbeatable. I'm like, not impossible, but they're not going to lose many games, and they would be the odds-on favorite without question to win a national championship. Who was the number 2 big guy in the country?
It's probably Hunter Dickinson.
And he had a horrible night last night. But say you put Hunter Dickinson, take Zach Edey off of Purdue's team and put Hunter Dickinson in that spot, they're maybe a top 20, probably a top 25 team, but
easy,
they're not
top 25, easy.
But they're definitely
25.
not a team that I would put in the hunt for neither a number 1 seed, nor would they be in the hunt for a national title, in my opinion, just because they're just not strong enough at the rest of the positions. And Hunter Dickinson has been so up and down.
I think you're underselling Braden Smith a little bit.
He's very good.
I think he's outstanding. I really do. I don't think there are many point guards in college basketball who are doing a better job than he. I think he's holding up a lot more than is often recognized. He is a superior playmaker. He makes shots. He runs tempo great. There are a lot of things he does really well. Lance Jones has been a huge addition on the wing. I think that they need better perimeter shooting from Fletcher Lawyer on a consistent basis. He understands how to do his job. He does it really well. But I do think that it's not unfair to ask him to make a higher percentage of open shots. He gets really open shots because of the nature of the offense and the openings that they get. And right now he's shooting 43%. So the numbers say it's great. But I see him in games where he gets really open. He missed 2 wide open shots in the first half of the Indiana game. They need him to make those shots. When he gets a tough late shot like anybody else, they're all college players are going to struggle. But when he gets those open shots, it could be game breakers. Those have got to drop. And like I said, I recognize that his percentage is outstanding. You can't argue with that.
42%.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
But
I mean, if you look at his last 4 games, and maybe I'm recency biasing him a little bit here, but his last 4 games, Rutgers 0 for 3. Then he has a 3 for 5 in the overtime game against Northwestern. Then he doesn't even take any against Wisconsin. I thought he passed up a lot of shots in that game. And then he goes 1 for 3 in the IU game. And those 2 misses were the ones I talked about, where he was literally wide open because of other action and other defensive reaction. So maybe it's just that's something that I've seen recently, and he's going to get back on a roll and start banging them in, and maybe that'll quiet you down as much as me.
Well, and it's not that but this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the difference maker from them being considered that unbeatable juggernaut. But man, look at Fletcher Lawyer. He's shooting 43%. He has put up 22 more 3-point attempts and is hitting a slightly better percentage than Braden Smith. He's hit 43 out of 100, so an easy 43%. But you've got your two starting guards that are shooting 42 and 43% from behind the arc. That's pretty damn remarkable. But yet they just don't seem to always show up all the time. And that is what I wonder if can they put a 6-game run together where there's always somebody there.
Well, I mean, I think that's where having Lance Jones makes a difference. He's played really well lately. His jump shot, his numbers are not as good.
He's only shooting 36% behind the arc, so he's trash.
But what I will tell you is,
just kidding.
But look, go back to January 1 and then do his numbers, and they are dramatically better over the course of that period. I think there was a level of adjustment to comfort and all of that. And of course, Purdue jumped into the deep end in Maui and the Arizona game. And so although they had bye games like everybody else, they didn't get a lot of time for him to make the adjustment to Purdue in the high major level. But now he has, and his numbers since January 1 they're extraordinary. They're for everything else he adds, they're outstanding. So if Fletcher can get back what he's been missing for most of those last 4 games, and then you have Lance, and then you have Braden Smith, I think that's a backcourt that is capable of winning it.
Oh, absolutely.
But I will say that you look at one of the things that stood out to me about Saturday night is that numerically that was not an exceptional performance by the Boilers. There were a lot of stats on primary stats on the box score that you want. Man, that's not great. That's not great. And then you look at the final score, and they won by 20 on their against their arch rivals. That was the
second time this season.
Yeah, it was a pretty good performance based on. It was a pretty good outcome based on the some of the numbers that they put up.
Zach Edey hit his only 3-pointer of his career.
Yes.
The bank was open, and oh my God, that was just the last dagger for Indiana. Is like, oh boy, you knew it was over then. I didn't know he had put up 2 attempts in on the season, but he has. So he's only a 50% 3-point shooter now. As a team, Purdue is shooting 40% behind the arc. That's crazy in this day and age.
Oh,
crazy good. I mean, you never see that. But for a team that is shooting 40% from 3, it doesn't seem like that. It's like, man, where are they sneaking all these in? Because Braden Smith is good most of the time. Fletcher Lawyer is good most of the time. But it doesn't seem like they've been that dominant from out there. But the numbers say otherwise. That's amazing.
Yeah. Mason Gillis, don't forget him. He shoots a great number too.
40. He only shoots 49%.
See, I think maybe the standard for them is so high now that if every shot doesn't go in, we wonder about it. And a lot, and we also will say that a lot of the shots that they get are wide open. That's why you need to make them, because they're getting wide open shots. And there will be opponents in the NCAA tournament that will grant wide open shots in the effort to dissuade Zach Edey from just completely dominating the game. There will be shots that are granted, and teams will say, okay, we got to take something away. Let's take a chance that this will be one of their slow days from the perimeter, because Zach Edey's not going to have any slow days if he's one-on-one in the post and he's throwing the ball down from above. He's not going to have any bad days. So that's what teams will do, and that's why Fletcher needs to make those shots. And and Mason Gillis needs to make shots, and Lance Jones. Those guys have to be able to be consistent and make those open shots that I'm talking about.
Yeah. So what is it going to take for somebody to beat Purdue? Purdue is the only team. Well, Yukon is right there, but they're a different animal. I mean, we're talking about two completely different teams here in Yukon and Purdue, both of which are a very high favorite to win it all. Yukon has the monkey on their back of having to do it back-to-back years, which adds to that for whatever reason. I don't know that if they're thinking about that at all. So if they are not, then that's better off for them. But somebody still has to beat Purdue, or does Purdue beat itself?
Well, I was having a conversation with Rafael Davis, my partner at Big Ten Basketball and Beyond, on Saturday, and he was talking about them versus Yukon. And I said, if that game actually happens, then the Boilers will have had a heck of a year and shut up a lot of people, because as it stands now, the only way that game happens, Yukon versus Purdue, would be in the national title game. It's the only, as it stands now, because Purdue is probably going to be the 1 overall seed and Yukon is probably going to be the 2 overall seed. That could be reversed depending on results down the stretch, but they're going to be, unless they both or one of them implodes down the stretch, they're going to be the 1 and 2 seeds. And so the only way at that point they could play one another is in the championship game in Glendale. And I don't think that Purdue, if they make that title game, all the other stuff goes away, and then it's just a game for them. Because if they make it to Glendale, the other stuff, all the stuff they've been hearing for the last 3 years is rendered obsolete. It doesn't matter anymore at that point. And so, I think what it'll take to beat Purdue is probably something like a really strong defensive effort against Zach, and then a bad shooting day by one or more of the Boilers on the perimeter. That's probably going to be an ingredient in what happens. But it also could be that somebody defeats their defense. Purdue is a very fine defensive basketball team, but they've had better at Purdue. I don't think that's a controversial statement. I think they're really good defensively. They're 13th in the country. I know they've had better than 13th in the country. That's good enough to win with if your offense is at its A game, because I think they're second in the nation in offense at this point. So it's certainly, you can win at 13 in defense if your offense is playing to number 2. But you'd probably need them to have an off day from the perimeter, and then maybe not be able to find a defensive game plan. Let's look at Yukon. Yukon has Alex Caravan shooting from the 4 spot. They have Stephon Castle, who's an NBA dynamic 3. They've got Tristan Newton, a bigger point guard than Braden Smith, so maybe he gives them some problem with size. And they've got Cam Spencer, you may remember from Rutgers, who busts threes from all over. Lance Jones would probably be on him. So and then you have Donovan Clingan, who would need a whole lot of help, some, but not a whole lot, because he's 7'1" himself. I mean, he's not Edey size, but he's 7'1" and dynamic. So he would be able to deal with the matchup, I would think. They have Samson Johnson off the bench if Clingan gets any foul trouble. So I think that would be a fascinating matchup. I'll sign up for that right now, Jim. That would be a heck of a championship game.
Absolutely. And I think we'll be, no matter what, I'm looking forward to the tournament as last year's was amazing. 1 minute left, but David asked, what does Mike think of Indiana and Mike Woodson's situation, which obviously just not the season that anybody was hoping for, but there's a lot more to it than just that. There are the missing pieces that we all knew was not there, and yet now you finally have Mike Woodson acknowledging, hey, we've got to add some pieces. Well, of course you do. Everyone already knew that. but there's just several things that seem to be coming acknowledged by the staff now that everyone else has seen for a while. And it's like, well, what did you expect? But so what are your thoughts on that situation?
Well, I don't understand. Look, 3 years ago, Indiana fans were excited about getting Mike Woodson back. He solved a lot of issues relative to the Knight departure. He made a lot of people feel better that had been resolved. If you want to, I don't know that you ever really resolve it, but it's sort of been addressed to an extent. I don't understand why the default response to a struggling season is, well, we need a new coach. I'll never understand that. What you liked him a year ago, now you don't like him because you had a bad year. What is that? Who like that? You know who does that? The programs that never get anywhere, never get like. Are there things that I disagree with philosophically? Yeah, I mean, this is 2024. The three-pointer is an important weapon now. It is not a prominent enough element of his, or has not been a prominent enough element of his approach to the game. And with this team, it's understandable. They didn't recruit enough shooting, and they didn't land enough of the shooters they did recruit. But a year ago, they had Miller Kopp, and they didn't work it enough for him to get shots. And they were fine. They had a good year. They got a 4 seed, all that. That's top 15, top 20 in the country. They had a really good year. But if you want to attract shooters, you got to show them that you're going to shoot the ball. That's why Creighton gets so many shooters, because they know that they're going to get shots. And so that's part of what Indiana has to do. They have to get better at point guard. They invested too much in Xavier Johnson coming back, and it's been a problem for them, both from bad luck and some things that are not just bad luck. So those elements of the team need to be improved. But I don't buy the idea like if you like the coach a year ago, you don't like him now because he had a bad year is just not. It's no great sporting organization functions that way. It just doesn't happen. It happens, but it doesn't happen with the great ones. You don't fire the guy, Kyle Shanahan, because he's lost 2 Super Bowls. That's not how good programs operate or good franchises operate. So there are things that I'd like to see Mike address. There's no doubt, and I think they are acknowledging that there are things they need to address. And I hope that that he addresses them and he and his staff address them. But this is not just this is not just an Indiana thing. It's not a college basketball thing. It's across all sports. It's not how the great organizations operate. There are lots of organizations that do this. Most of them are named the New York Jets.
Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network. You can catch him each weekend with Ray Feld and Rick Pizzo, I'm sure. Is it Rick?
Correct.
Every week on the BTN. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Jim.
You betcha. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News. Make sure you're giving him a follow and following his content. We've got more coming up in the next hour here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with all of that and more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. Hey, so did you send that to Aaron Torres?
Yes, I've messaged him twice.
How did you send it?
First I said, good morning. Below is the link for you to join us at 9:30 Eastern time. Then I send the link. And then a couple minutes ago, I just said, Jim is now ready for you to join.
Did you send it by text or email?
Through text. I don't have his email.
Do you have an avatar for him in case we have to?
He has to do that himself. I can't do that.
Well, I mean, okay.
He's messaging me saying that he thought he was going at 10:10.
He can. That was the original thing. Tell him that's fine.
Okay.
Jeez. it really sucks if we don't know if Mike Niziolek is coming on.
He is coming on. I talked to him too.
Okay.
That's fine. I'll tell him he's off the hook. I'll just
who? No.
Tell him not.
Let me ask Mike if he can come on now. Gee whiz.
I'll go ahead and tell him. Tell Torres we'll do him at 10:10.
Mike.
Oh, well, here's Aaron. Aaron's here.
Oh, wow.
Go and pull him in.
Hey, Aaron, how are you, sir?
I'm good, guys. How you doing?
Great. Thank you very much. I want to
No
make sure I
problem.
get everything promoted. How do you want to be announced? As what is your what do you, I guess, title or whatever? Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
we
sir.
got you.
Okay. Sorry. Fox Sports Radio and host of the Aaron Torres podcast is great.
I guarantee you've never heard of a guy named George Montgomery, have you?
No, I don't think so.
All right, here we go, guys. 20 seconds. Go and pull us back in from break. Community. Choose from one of the gorgeous Stonecrest Signature Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Ravesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday. Thank you very much for being with us on this post-birthday and pre-Valentine's here on the 13th. Joined now by Fox Sports Radio's Aaron Torres and at Aaron Torres Podcast. Make sure you go and pick that up for more coverage of college basketball with Aaron, who has been around for a minute. Aaron, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Jim, my pleasure. Excited to be with you guys. Hope everybody's doing good.
Yeah, it is that time of the college basketball season. Last year, we got a dose of – there was like a line that before last season, the tournament last year was unbelievable, spectacular, shocking, which it has always been that, but it kind of got ramped up to like, what the hell? And I expect nothing less this season as the parity is just spreading out like moss across a rock. But there are certain teams that we look at. I was just talking to Mike DeCourcy. Purdue, even though they have a history of not doing what they're supposed to do, there's no way in the world to pick against Mount Edie and that team. Then you have Yukon, and those two teams are kind of standing above everybody else right now. Kansas is a team that I would put up there as a Final Four team, but yet they just got beat by 29 last night. So it is it's going to be another fun and wacky NCAA into the season, I believe.
Let me ask you guys a question since you're in the belly of the beast. You know, it sounds weird to say, any team that hasn't made a Final Four since 1980, so that's 44 years. Is it Final Four or bust for Purdue right now? Because it's just, even last year they got the number one seed, but they took some lumps during the regular season. I mean, they lost to Indiana at home, and there's still a couple weeks left in the regular season, but I mean, they are trending towards an even better regular season than last year. What is like the vibe of this needs to happen for it to be considered a successful season for Purdue? I'm curious for your guys' perspective.
I think that they have to go to the Final Four. I mean,
I agree.
there's been too many Hell, they've only, looked yesterday, they've only been to 3 Elite Eights in this period since 1980.
Yeah.
Three. And everybody laughs about Indiana having fallen off. Well, they've still been to 6 Elite Eights in that same time frame. They've been to a Final Four 20 years more recently than Purdue. And I'm not comparing the two because Indiana's program is a mess right now, without question. And Purdue has been the model of consistency, but not the model of postseason success.
No, 100%. And, and that's, I think, been the knock on Purdue is it's not just, the lack of the Final Four, and it's not just the last 3 years. It's that, Matt Painter's been there since the early to mid 2000s. I forget exactly what year.
17 years, I think.
Yeah, it's something because I remember when they lost to Fairleigh Dickinson last year, and we don't have to relive all that. But, you go back and you look, and it's like, I believe it's like 3 Sweet 16s and 1 Elite Eight. So it's not just the lack of Final Four success, it's the lack of tournament success overall. And I think that's been my criticism of Purdue over the last couple of years is you can't keep selling me on all this regular season success if none of it equates to tournament success. And so it is an interesting conundrum because it is, like I said, if there's no historical precedent, can you say it'd really be disappointing if it hasn't happened? But I think absolutely, because again, Painter's done it all in the regular season. I don't want to discredit him. He's actually, by all accounts, a great guy. He actually joined our radio show on Saturday night and gave us about 15 minutes of his time. So this isn't a knock Matt Painter because I'm appreciative of everything he did for me last weekend and what he's done as Purdue's head coach. But you do sit there and say, okay, you're closing in on 20 years in a power conference. I understand that where you started maybe wasn't the best. But, I mean, you've been pretty consistently there the last 12 to 15 years since you really had Robbie Hummel and Etuan Moore and all those guys. And it's like at a certain point, you either got to or get off the pot here. And it's like this does feel kind of like the year where if this ends in a Sweet 16 and you're a 1 seed and you lose to the 6th best team from the Big 12 or something, I do think that has to be considered a disappointment.
Without question, not only that, for the Big Ten, because – it's a watered down conference without question this year. Even though we thought it would be a little bit better than it has been, I don't know what in the hell is going on in Madison. A team that had looked as consistent as anybody, they've lost 4 straight, and I'm like, dude, I don't know how that's possible with a team like that, but they have.
Well, and it goes a little bit back to Purdue for a second. I mean, it goes back to where I'm hesitant. I don't know why, but I was thinking about Purdue this morning. Maybe it was knowing that I was coming out with you guys is on the one hand, I do think it's Final Four or bust. On the other hand, you do look at the Big Ten and, again, they're pacing at an even better trend than they did last year when they ended up with a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. But it's not as though they're getting the stiffest competition on a night in, night out basis. And to your guys' point, I think Wisconsin is the perfect example of that, right? Is that, you go there 2 Sundays ago, it's a top 10 matchup. You think, okay, you got this big road win. This is really the statement of the Big Ten so far. And Wisconsin has since lost back-to-back games since then. And so, Wisconsin is struggling. Obviously, Indiana speaks for itself. Iowa is down from where it was in previous years. Rutgers is down from where it was in previous years. Penn State made the tournament last year and won a game. They're obviously not trending that direction. So I could go on and on, but you look at the league, and it's a credit to Purdue for winning all these games that they have to win. But it is also like how much are they being tested on a night-to-night basis, because virtually every program is down from where they've been historically.
Yeah, and now that with college basketball being the way it is with the transfer portal, you cannot underestimate anybody from anywhere, any conference. It no longer matters.
Nope.
Indiana fans are they're up in arms. The 3rd year of Mike Woodson is far from what they had hoped or wanted or expected by many of them. And with good reason. I mean, 3rd year in, there you've got 2 different camps. You got one camp that kind of still lives in the old style of college basketball where it took 3 to 4 years to build a program. Well, that's no longer today. Now you can come in and you can build quickly with the portal, with the if you have resources, Indiana's got a ton of resources. When people say that Indiana's not relevant, I just kind of laugh. I go, trust me, they're relevant. Indiana's just a sleeping giant.
It is.
That's why the fan base is just it stays the way it is, no matter what, and that's why they're up in arms. But it's time for Indiana to make right decisions. It's time for Indiana to get it right. It's just time to stop this, because there's no reason for Indiana not to have a solid program with the talent that comes out of this state, with the resources they have, with the fan base, with Assembly Hall, they have one of the best NIL programs, yet they're not getting it done. And there's the excuses are running a little thin in that area.
Well, and I think it's what's ironic is that first of all, I am surprised a little bit, and I'm not saying what you said is wrong, Jim, but like as an outsider, you did make the NCAA tournament each of the last 2 years. You won a game each of the last 2 years. And listen, the Miami team that you lost to was really good last year. Obviously, they made a Final Four. But I also understand that, limping in as a 9-10 seed, whatever they were, and then obviously this year's just been off the rails. It's disappointing. And I think the thing to me that's been most surprising is the place where I thought Mike Woodson would struggle when he took the job, and I was very critical, and Indiana fans weren't fans of me for a very long time, is I thought it was going to be the recruiting. And that's obviously been an area of strength. I mean, one, just to retain the players that he did up from the previous regime, most notably Trace Jackson Davis. And then, of course, since then, to get a Mackenzie Mbako, to beat Bill Self head-to-head for him, to get a Khalil Ware out of the transfer portal, to get a Xavier Johnson out of the transfer portal, who I know Indiana fans are up and down on. You just go on and on down the list, is that I think that's the part that's been surprising to me. He's actually been a very good recruiter, a much more effective recruiter than I expected him to be. And I thought that was my area of concern when the hire was made, was you have a guy that's been out of college basketball for 40 years, coming in at kind of the most transformational time in the last 40 years, with NIL and the portal becoming a thing over the last 3 or 4 years. And so the funny part is, or the ironic part is, maybe is the right word, is that the one thing that you thought would be an issue, or I thought at least would be an issue, has actually been an area of strength, and it's been the on-the-court results that haven't gotten there. And I also think, two things they don't have to be mutually exclusive either. I think because the recruiting has been so good, it has raised expectations. I, for one, thought that they were probably in that second tier in the Big Ten behind Purdue coming into the year. They clearly haven't been. And so, it's a weird, frustrating time. And I do, because of the things that you said, Jim, about the NIL and about everything that Indiana can be, I do understand why fans are so frustrated.
Yeah, to go along with your recruiting, they have done great in recruiting some big names, Malik Renew and Khalil Ware and Liam McNeely coming in. But where they have failed or missed are the ancillary pieces around them. Guard play has not only has it not been good, there's no depth whatsoever, and there is zero shooting. But a lot of that, or part of that, is because it's not being embraced in Mike Woodson's offense, the 3-point shot. And then again, I look at Purdue's numbers, they're off the chart as a team. They're shooting 40%, which is nuts. But Indiana has just not shot the ball from behind the arc very well with what they have either.
No, 100%. And I certainly know that is the frustration, if you will, of the fan base. And, I'm not a fan. I'm not here to say what's right or wrong. But, whatever it was against Illinois, when it ends up being and the Illinois game is just an example, but whatever, I think it's a 4 or 5 point game with a minute or two to go, and you're 0 for whatever from 3, and you finish shooting whatever 0 for 11 or 0 for 12 or 0 for 19 or whatever it ended up being. It's an area of frustration. And so, I don't know if Mike Woodson is willing to change. I don't know if he's willing to change his style of play, but this is the new era, and I mean, you look at that state that's bordering you, Kentucky's got its own issues, but it really started in previous years on the offensive end. Now this year, the offense is good, but they can't get defensive stops. But it's just interesting because Calipari was kind of the same way. He kind of embraced athleticism and defensive ability. And this year he went all in on offense. And for about, the first probably 8 to 9 weeks of the season, it looked like he made the right decision. Now that team is struggling in its own right. But again, just kind of a coach of kind of the same age range, the same era with many of the same problems right in your backyard there, guys.
Yeah, and then you see how about Indiana State? Great
story, man.
I don't think anybody saw that coming into the top 25.
Well, no, I mean, the crazy thing about them, I was just talking to somebody over there yesterday. I mean, sometimes, and to your point, Jim, it's an evolving world of college sports, but, sometimes you get these mid-major teams that return a lot, and it isn't a surprise to the guys in the building, even if maybe nationally it is. But that was a team in Indiana State. I mean, they only had 4 scholarship players that came back this year. Now, one of them was Robbie Avila, who of course is kind of a internet sensation or whatever, all that. But for the most part, I mean, their leading scorer, Swope, was a transfer. A lot of their main contributors were transfers. And so, again, I think when a mid-major team has success, we kind of assume, well, maybe they were able to keep the core together and the portal wasn't an issue. No, they were in the portal just like anybody else. But they found pieces that fit. The guys that came back believed in the vision. The guys that came back helped the guys that were coming in transition. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question to be beyond 22-3, to be ranked in the top 25. I believe this is the most wins that they've had in any season already since the Larry Bird team of 79. Just absolutely incredible. And, listen, I'm not enough of a bracketologist to know if they have any chance if they don't win the Missouri Valley, but that's the kind of team I hope that they are in that field of 68 and that they do have a chance to kind of show the nation how good they are on a national stage.
We'll certainly find out. Aaron Torres from Fox Sports Radio and at Aaron Torres Pod. Make sure you give him a follow. Aaron, I can't thank you enough. It's been fun, man, and I'd love to do this again as the season progresses.
Absolutely, Jim. I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you, and I look forward to talking to you guys soon.
Absolutely. Aaron Torres, Fox Sports Radio, at Aaron Torres Pod as well. We've got more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Chronic Hoosier joins us next, brought to you by our good friends at the Ugly Grouper on Anna Marie Island, Florida, for all you Floridians down there. Back right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Good morning, Chronic.
What's good today, gentlemen?
How are you, brother?
Did you hear that, Jim? Is it still there?
I think it's gone now.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. There it is.
Let me try
this real quick.
Yeah.
Do you want me to bounce out and jump back in?
Yeah, go ahead. I don't know why.
We're
hearing you and Jen, and it's through your microphone. We'll come back in, Chronic. I don't know what that was.
No, I'm not creating a new account. Gee whiz.
All right, let's try that again.
Any better this go around?
Yay!
Test.
There we go. No echo. No echo.
Much better.
No echo. How are you, sir?
Living the dream.
Echo thought I started talking to her again. I love when that happens. I don't even know what she's in there talking about. What's new, brother?
Just living the dream. Getting ready to go spend 8 hours taking my girl to Chicago tomorrow so she can save 2 hours in customs. It's just silly.
Oh, to go up to TSA or something?
Yeah, she's going to Spain this May, and
so is my daughter. My daughter's going to Italy.
Yeah, she's got a school trip. She's going to be in Barcelona and Madrid for 2 weeks, but they were due to get pre anyhow, and I was like, you know what? We'll just get you global. No worries. It'll save you at customs. And unlike pre, they take your money up front for global, and then it's only after you pay them and put all the information in and they approve you, which was awesome. They did it in 24 hours. they're like, well, you either have to go to Detroit or Chicago if you want this done before August. So yeah, I get to spend 8 hours, so she doesn't spend 2 hours in customs.
Yeah,
But there's pizza on the other end of the road, so I can't bitch too loud.
There's that. Yeah. Last time my daughter says, "Yeah, I'm studying abroad," and I'm like, "Again?" Because I'm going to Italy. I'm like, "For how long?" 2 weeks. I go, "Oh, so it's just a vacation." I'm like, "Gee whiz, how is going for 2 weeks anywhere studying abroad?"
Just take a notebook with you, man.
Oh, she's in honors college.
Right.
What am I going to say?
10 seconds, guys.
Financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this Tuesday, February 13th. Thank you so much for being with us, as always. Joined now by our good friend Chronic Hoosier, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Just get more to your door by going to AndyMooreHonda.com for the best in new and used vehicles. Chronic, how are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful, man. Thanks for having me back.
Always a pleasure. You know, looking forward to there's a concert at Memorial Stadium in Bloomington this April. I guess that's a little 5 weekend. Cade, what's his name? Cade, I can't remember. It's those newer country artists, man. I can't keep Kane Brown, Pardee, Jack Pardee, and our friend John. Who else is there?
Clayton
Anderson, yeah. Who's kicking it off, which is awesome. Great dude. So, but
fun fact, I handed Clayton his first check as a professional musician.
Wow. That didn't you used to manage a bar or something?
I did. I used to own a bar here in town, and he used to come up for open mic nights. Well, I say used to. He did it twice. And like on Tuesday nights, we made twice the gross of what we were on the Saturdays, in the weeks leading up to that. He brought all his Bedford boys up and just tore the place down. So been nothing but awesome to watch his career just grow and flourish, and love to see him playing in front of some Hoosiers here for Little Five.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. Where's this place? John Pardee. There you go. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I don't know any of the other dudes, man. I'm with you. I'm a little out of the loop when it comes to some of the new and emerging artists.
Man, if it's not Brooks and Dunn or Waylon Jennings, I'm like, huh? Who?
I'm like on year 8 or 9 of my Spotify rap being pretty much just a repackaging in the last years. But that's the problem. When you listen, you download that playlist and then it just kind of reseeds itself for the next year.
Well, and it's great because I say this all the time. I'm like, what artist today is going to be listened to 20, 30 years from now? I don't know that there are that many, but yet look at all the music from 30, 40, 50 years ago that is listened to still in abundance. From the Stones to the Beatles to Van Halen, AC/DC, just all those. There's just so damn many of them. Maybe that's just a group of people, but I think it's bigger than that.
The Grateful Dead just set a record for staying on the charts forever. They never leave.
Man, I've never been a Dead fan. And it's nothing negative. It just, I was never into, maybe it was the patchouli oil that put me off.
Yeah, it can be an assault on the nose, but it's a good time. We're looking forward. We're going to go out and catch them at the Sphere out in Vegas here this summer. They're doing a 2-month residency.
Really?
Yep.
I thought that was just U2's spot. Man, that thing looks freaky wild.
So U2, they had the opening gig, if you will, And credit to them. They've been on a run for a minute out there, several months. But their residency is coming to an end, and everybody's rushing to fill in some of those open spaces. So Fish is going to do a run out there. The Dead is doing a 2-month residency out there, just weekends, Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. I can't wait to see what it's like once it kind of.
And Chronic slipped away there for a second. I'm sure he'll be back with us here in a momento as we're just talking some what's the word the phrase I'm looking for? Pop culture. There we go. Chronic jumping back on and get him back in.
I am back in. Is the echo back?
No, I just had you on too many. Perfect.
Nice.
Yeah, so switching unfortunately to Indiana sports, of course, Indiana basketball right now, not where the fans would like to see it. And you have a group of people that would love to see a change. A, that is not going to happen. B, then there's a group that doesn't want to see the change, which that's fine because their wishes are going to be granted. There will not be a change. I assure you, unless that was voluntary. But Indiana and Mike Woodson acknowledged this finally. They don't have what they need still to compete at this level. They don't have the guard depth. They don't have the shooting, but more importantly, they don't have an offense that is modern, and because they're trying to beat teams 2-3 too often, and that just hasn't worked well for them.
Yeah, you say the phrase they've not been competitive, and I think that's been probably the rub for me is when you see a team that's gone down double digits. I think 5 out of the last 7 games they've been down by 18 or more at some point in the game. I just saw a friend of mine, Torres Edranya, had mentioned Woodson's now lost almost 16% of his games by a margin of over 15. That's just not competitive by definition. It's one thing to lose. It's one thing to start stacking up losing streaks, but it's a whole nother thing when you're getting your doors blown off and you're barely lifting your fist to fight back. So it's dispiriting, and I think you see that reflected in the comments right now for certain.
Absolutely, and it has to be tough to continue to deal with in the recruiting world because you got to sell guys on being the answer to those problems. One of those, Trent Sisley, Neatley, and McNeely already coming in, but guys that you look at toward the future, like Trent Sisley, like, dude, you're exactly who we need. And others like that has to be the story for Indiana, but they have to get them in here and have them. But there's also things like development. We're not seeing the development of a lot of the ancillary players.
Well, that's kind of a thorny one for me. I feel like what often gets passed off as a lack of development is probably the exposure of an incomplete roster, faulty roster construction rather. And when you don't have the guards that can compete, it's going to be really difficult no matter how many NBA talent big guys you have. It's a guards game today, and Indiana has just been exposed for lack of scoring, lack of playmaking, and I think a lot of that takes center stage. But the defensive side of the ball has been just as terminal for the Hoosiers this year, and in years past when you've seen Indiana struggle, the last 2 years prior, it was usually their defense that was able to get them back in the game, and that's just not present this year.
No, and again, that goes back to your personnel as well. So Indiana has to do a much better job of filling all of the holes. They can't just go get a big name and
ride on that, there has to, Mike Woodson acknowledged that that they have to add some pieces. Well, that doesn't help them right now, and that can't be great to hear if you're a member on the team.
No, certainly not. But I think there's also a level of pragmatism that's required. I think everybody on the bench right now knows what they're doing is just not good enough. And I don't know how many of those guys view themselves as part of a solution, or part of the reason why they're going to start looking for greener pastures. And I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think one of the problems you run into, and I mentioned this in a Twitter conversation following the Purdue game, seeing lopsided losses to Purdue is not anything unfamiliar to Indiana fans over the last 10, 15 years. I vividly remember hanging around in the gym. I saw every one of Tom Crean's losses live versus Purdue. And I vividly remember seeing Verdell and Jordy and Christian and Derek and all of those guys coming out of the locker room after every one of those losses. And if they weren't actively in tears, you could tell that they weren't that far behind them. And just the pain and the anguish and the way that it tore them up, but to the point that it drove them to be literal madmen. They put in the work in the gym. They got better. They improved themselves individually. Through that process, collectively, they developed a winning culture. They got Cody and they got revenge. But at the end of the day, it took work and it took leadership so that every class that came in understood the stakes, that those guys weren't trying to be the doormats anymore. They were going to fight back and they were going to raise themselves up. And, not dissimilar to this team, you had a lot of young guys back then that were probably thrust prematurely into roles that they probably weren't ready for. And you saw Gabe Cup's dad acknowledge so much in an interview he did last week that this wasn't the role that he expected to play. It's not that he's shying away from it, but this wasn't the plan for him to come in and pull this kind of minutes. And obviously it's a steep learning curve for a true freshman to come into, high major basketball and compete night in, night out at the level that's expected by Indiana fans. But back then, with those early Crean teams, you had that roster continuity. Even though he had a huge turnover rate, you still had a core group of guys who matriculated through the program and were able to pass on those lessons and set the expectations for every class that followed. Now, it certainly helps when you can bring in guys like Will Sheehy and Victor Oladipo, and then later Cody Zeller and so on. But it takes that internal leadership in order to pull those guys up to the level that's expected by everyone.
And so what is it? Where does Indiana go from here? This season, I don't want to dump a bucket of water on the season, but there is I see zero path for a successful end to the season, minus potentially a NIT appearance if they can get things right. But they're teetering on that even.
Yeah, this is where it gets really tricky, because I know a lot of fans want to be very, very dismissive of an NIT bid and, failing to make the tournament and all the shame that comes with that. But if your issue is really a young team that just doesn't have experience, nothing better than more reps, more sets, more practices, more time in the film room, and ultimately more time on the court, just to figure out what it's going to take. You look at the arc that Terry Morin's program has been on, and it started in the NIT. It started with the championship and then parlayed itself into tournament, the big games.
Great point.
And that's just what it takes. It's not it's not a leap. You just go from zero to light speed, and all of a sudden you're a blue blood program once again. It's a process, and you can't cheat it. And it's going to take work, and it's going to take leadership. Now, the question that I've been asking throughout the season is, where's the leadership coming from? Who's going to step up and take that mantle, and who's going to be willing to follow? Because that's a two-way street. You've got to have guys willing to lead, but you also have guys willing to follow. And you see it in spurts, but oftentimes it's who's coming behind them. And I think that's been one of the issues this year is the leaders you do have struggle themselves, and the guys that need to be taking their cues just simply aren't.
Absolutely. Chronic Hoosier, I cannot thank you enough, brother. As always, look forward to it next week, and hopefully better news to talk about for Indiana fans.
Well, the good thing is Indiana fans are totally sane and rational and not prone to overreacting. So I'm sure it's going to be smooth sailing for the rest of the year.
Absolutely. I expect nothing other than that. Appreciate you,
If
my
we weren't
friend.
crazy, we wouldn't love them.
That's right. It wouldn't be what fun would it be? Look at Kentucky fans. They're ranked in the top 20 right now, or 22nd, and they won his head, Calipari's head. So yeah, this is not something that is unique to the state of Indiana. But
but the difference is great programs respond with great responses.
There you go. That's something we'll see. Chronic Hoosier joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Up next, Mike Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times. Looking forward to that. Brought to you by Andy Moore Honda. Just get more to your door by going to andymorehonda.com. Back right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
Good morning,
Michael, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Michael always looks like the most knowledgeable guy in the history of the world.
I know, it's like we're about to chat with Einstein or something with all the shelves in the background.
Yeah, that cache of books. Are those books or those?
No, those are video games. And
I knew it.
I thought they might be CDs or DVDs and stuff.
Once I started looking, I started.
What's your biggest? You mentioned games. So, what's your biggest part of your collection? What system?
Over my shoulder here is Sega. All the Sega stuff.
Okay.
And Sony stuff is on over this shoulder with the NES games at the top.
That's pretty cool.
Well, what's part of the hysteria have I been a part of? 5. I'm confused.
I think 5 lefts based on the position he normally takes. I think he's referring to you kind of getting the conversation rolling on Woodson not being good enough for the program.
Well, I didn't say that. I said the job
You
is
did.
Not.
Maybe not today, but
I don't recall saying that in those words.
Started.
But
maybe you didn't say it verbatim the way that I just worded it, but you've insinuated it.
I don't know that the job is being done to the level that it should be. I don't think I would back off.
Be fair to say.
I don't think I'll back off on that.
I'm not saying you said anything wrong. I'm just confirming what he was trying to get through on the comments.
Michael, how have you been? What's new, man?
Right.
I saw you got a new piece on football. I saw that just pop up a second ago, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, just stuff from that his press conference the other week.
Oh, M-I-C-H. Come on, man. There we go. Man, Indiana, I'll talk about this when we get on, but
Here, go ahead and save it. I'll pull us back in.
Here we go. 3 items, and now fresh seafood. Chop Shop Market and Table has the largest selection of in-house made products around and everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It is Tuesday, February 13th. Appreciate you being with us here at Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Mike Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times joining us now, and he's got a piece out in regards to Kurt Cignetti and Indiana football. And the spring game coming up on April 18th. It's not that far away, peeps. Just barely over 2 months. But some recent changes, Mike, has got to have Indiana football fans really juiced, because Indiana will have the first 2 non-con games, which, while there has been a transition in coaches, you still expect win in those games. Then they have to go to Los Angeles to play UCLA at the Rose Bowl, which seemed a little more daunting, but now they have a coaching change, and they were obviously a good team last year, but not a superior team. And so now the thought has to be, can Indiana, even though we don't know what Indiana's going to be like, but could they potentially go to Los Angeles, win that game, come back, beat Charlotte, and be 4-0 to start the season, 2 games shy of bowl eligibility?
Yeah, I mean, their schedule looks slightly less imposing than it did. I mean, you talk about that UCLA matchup. Obviously, they were going to be kind of rebuilding a little bit, and now without Chip, I mean, it looks a lot different. Maryland's going to be in the market, obviously for a new quarterback, and looking a lot different than they were last year. And Washington's now gone through, significant upheaval. So, I mean, I think you're looking at a schedule that has a lot of winnable games. And obviously, that there's still that daunting now, again, Michigan, Ohio State back-to-back late in the season. But, I mean, your goal is to get bowl eligibility. Kurt Cignetti obviously wants to continue that streak. And I think the schedule sets up nicely, even more so than a couple months ago when you looked at it just on the face of kind of what teams went through with, coaching changes themselves and roster upheaval.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. The thing is, we don't know what they're going to be like, because it is, you want to talk about a new team, man, it is new. It's going to be everything new defense, new offense, new quarterback, new style, especially I think the tempo is really going to get people, because you got to practice fast to be fast has been the mantra. Indiana is going to look to put teams on their heels, and I get that. Indiana has to do something different when you're not quite as deep as some of the teams that they'll be playing. And man, I don't want to set expectations unreasonably high, because it's dumb when you don't know what they're going to be like. But just on paper, it looks like it could be a successful season in year 1 for Kurt Cignetti.
Well, I think you can have expectations, because Kurt Cignetti said we're going to win, right? I mean,
there's that. That's right. And if not, Google it.
Right. Google him. Not to the level of necessarily competing for a Big Ten title, but I think having a winning season is what he said is sort of the minimum expectation level. So, I mean, you start there. I think, like you said, there are certainly question marks across the roster in terms of what this team will look like. I think offensively, he's done a really nice job in terms of talent acquisition, plus bringing back, the top guys that were in the portal. When you talk about, McCulley, Carter Smith. And so, I think you're loaded there, and you've added some talent. I think they added to the depth of the offensive line. I still think defensively, they're going to struggle a little bit. I don't think they focused as much on, they've brought in some guys, brought in some James Madison guys, and obviously look to Old Dominion for help in the back end of the secondary. But I still think defensively, they're going to struggle a little bit. But, his reputation is scoring points. And so if he can do that, I mean, I think they'll probably feel more comfortable in shootouts than they were a year ago. But obviously it all depends on who's the quarterback. And I think that's obviously, like you said, the biggest question going into spring.
And even though it is, the expectation is that that's going to be the Ohio transfer. No guarantees for anything. But this schedule, there has never been a schedule set up for success like this one. I mentioned the 2 non-con games to start. Then you got UCLA and the coaching change. Come back at home to play Charlotte. Then you're at home against Maryland. Then you go play Northwestern. Then you have Nebraska at home. Then you have Washington at home, who's also in the midst of a coaching change. And then you have Michigan State. So the best part of your season comes in the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games before it gets to Michigan, Ohio State, and Purdue. I've never seen the schedule set up like that for Indiana.
Yeah, we'll see how they handle. Obviously, this will be one of the longer road trips. They've had in a long time in terms of going to the West Coast. Sometimes that can be a bit tricky. And what time that game kickoff is. 11 a.m. kickoff or something like that, or those could be rough on the West Coast. But obviously it sets up well. But they need they have a lot of roster decisions to make, and I think it'll be interesting to see with that schedule. Rourke is kind of like you mentioned, the Ohio transfer is kind of the favorite in the clubhouse in terms of experience winning that starting job. But I mean, with that kind of schedule, do you give a guy like Tyler Cherry a chance to sort of get some reps, get some work in, and he's enrolled early to sort of compete for that job. So I mean, I think Kurt is going to be wanting to win now, but also with an eye for the future in terms of the quarterback battle.
Absolutely. So that's going to be very interesting and fun to look to. The spring game will go a long way in setting not expectations, but kind of keeping the excitement level for Indiana football, which that's something you don't normally see with Indiana football with the fans. I'm sure the basketball's lack of success plays into that a little bit, but Indiana fans they've hungered for a good football program for a long time. Just because they haven't been good does not mean that the desire is not there. But it's also going to be interesting to see if the fans go through a change. Do they start sticking it out instead of leaving at halftime, winning or losing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, I think the team has to win them over, and they have to be competitive. I think, it'll be interesting to see if, basketball doesn't make the NIT or goes out early. Then the football is going to have sort of the spotlight on themselves for much of spring. It's starting spring camp after Indiana's spring break, which gets done, that Monday, March 18th. That's when they're going to start spring practice. So they're kind of out of the way of the Big Ten tournament, out of the way at the end of the season of the basketball season. The women will be playing, but I mean, a lot of the spotlight will be on, Curt Cignetti, and I think he wants that, and I think he's going to, try to take advantage of that, trying to, get the fan base excited, because he said he wants to remake the brand and sort of, have people forget about what they know about Indiana football. I mean, I think, the heavy lifting will be done this fall when they start winning some games, but he's going to try to convince some people in the spring that, his style and his things are, the way he does things is going to, be the first steps forward into doing that.
Well, there's a 3-word phrase that I use all the time: winning cures everything. And if they're winning games, I think that the excitement will continue, which it will be something to see. I mean, I was around for the Bill Mallory days, and it was fun to see Indiana fans into football. It's fun to see football because football is such an important program, and never more so than it is now, to schools in talks of realignment and the Big Ten and the SEC kind of potentially, they've not said it about pulling away, but in joining together just to have conversations and whatnot. You've always, you've got to have in the back of your mind that, hey, you've got to have a successful football program. And I don't mean you're winning Rose Bowls or whatever, but you have to be competitive if you're going to be in one of these leagues.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why Indiana, had to make a change, because I mean, they were over the last, 3 seasons, really not even, close. And so, you had to do something. And they needed to kind of reverse that trend in terms of not being competitive. Forget Michigan and Ohio State. I mean, you can't be losing the games they did to Michigan State, to the Purdues of the world. Like, those are the people that NIL, I think you're competitive against those schools, so there's not really an excuse there. Talent level wise, you're pulling in just as good of a talent, and you've done better in the transfer portal than a lot of those teams in the last 2 years. And so, I think they needed to sort of, reverse that course, because they were losing too many games to the teams that they should, that they feel like they need to win to make those bowl games. Because, that's where this team, needs to be year in and year out, to get 6 wins.
How hard is it, do you think, to get Indiana fans? When I went to I remember going down to the Gator Bowl a few years ago when Indiana played Tennessee, and I was surprised and shocked. I was like, wow, look at this Indiana turnout. I couldn't believe it. It seemed like they were everywhere at the hotel, and I got to the field. But then once we filed into the stadium, you could see that it was 80% orange. And I'm like, oh my. Of course, that was geography played into that and whatnot. But what is it going to take for Indiana? We know they have a great following in basketball because of the history and because of the lack thereof in football. How much is it going to take to get Indiana fans to buy into that program?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have necessarily the historical perspective because, I'm fairly new to the beat, but I think that once long term, I think their vision for the stadium will help. I think that does make a difference in terms of modernizing it. Because I think that Indiana's facilities sort of lag behind right now in terms of the stadium, in terms of a fan perspective. And right now, I think all teams are sort of combating that it's really easy to stay at home and watch a game and be comfortable, and you have kind of the best screens that you can, are not very expensive anymore. And so you're fighting that. And I think Indiana needs to fight that because the product on the field wasn't good. And if the stadium is not sort of that next level, how do you get fans in the stands? And so Curt Cignetti said he's going to win games. That'll help. Scott Dolson said, changes to the Memorial Stadium are coming, and they're being, sort of discussed how they want to approach everything except the end zones. And so I think that all makes a difference. And, you hope in a couple of years it all comes together, and that vision sort of aligns to sort of have bigger crowds or sellout crowds. And meaningful games late in the season, I think, would help. Obviously, if you're competitive, that makes a difference.
Absolutely. And looking forward to that being the case. There was a time where Indiana did compete with Michigan and Ohio State. How is that possible to catch up with programs like that? Because they're on another level.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what the current leadership structures talked about, the sort of haves and have-nots, and there's becoming 2 tiers. And Ohio State right now, the offseason they had, it's just it's kind of insane on paper what they've been able to do. You talk about adding a head coach as your offensive coordinator, the transfers they've got. As good as Indiana's had as an off season. You're not on the same level. So, but there's 4 teams like that. So Indiana is sort of in the majority with the rest of the Power 5 in terms of that. So you're not alone, but that's kind of the imbalance is what people have talked about lately in terms of just that NIL money and the school, certain schools just having such a built-in advantage.
Michael Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times, I appreciate you greatly as always, man. Look forward to doing it again next week, and maybe it's a win for Indiana as they do not play until Sunday.
Won't lose this week, right?
There you go. You got that going for you. So they're absolutely didn't even think about that, but appreciate you very much.
Anytime, Jim. Thanks, man.
You bet. Mike Niziolek from the Bloomington Herald-Times joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. And It has been a fun day as always. Mike DeCourcy, Aaron Torres from Fox Sports Radio, and at Aaron Torres Pod. Go to listen to that, covering college basketball, Chronic Hoosier as well. And most importantly, you guys, appreciate everybody and your comments over here on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Michael asking, is anyone working with the players? Yeah, the coaches are.
1 minute.
I saw someone asking, is Calvert working with the players? Yes, they do, but I'm not sure in exactly what way. But yes, tomorrow we're back to do it all again. Looking forward to Dustin or Dylan Sin rather being with us, and Kyle Neddenrip from the Indy Star, and Rick Bozich as usual. Thursday, Michael Mango is going to join us, former attorney for the NCAA. We'll talk about some things with the new rules and all of that. But appreciate everybody today. Cannot thank you enough as always. Hope you go out and have yourselves a great one. And whether you're listening to us on the ref and down in Evansville on 97.7, always the right call, 1380 The Fan, and 100.9 FM in Fort Wayne, or 12:30 a.m., 104.7 FM, WJOB, the voice of the region, or on YouTube. We appreciate each and every one of you tremendously. Until tomorrow, for John, the producer, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.